Welcome into the DNVR Rockies podcast, brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook, where now code DNVR at signup is going to get you some special offers on the Masters this weekend. Actually, it starts on Thursday, where a simple $5 bet is going to get you $25 in free bets for every birdie 2022 U.S. Open winner, Bryson DeChambeau, wins. That's with code DNVR on DraftKings Sportsbook. I'm your host, Patrick Lyons, and on today's DNVR Rockies podcast, we got our guy every week, the voice of the Colorado Rockies for AT&T SportsNet, the host of the Drew Goodman podcast. It's Drew Goodman. What's going on, buddy?
How you been, Patrick? You doing well?
Doing real well. Excited for the start of this season. We're getting one. This is good. I was worried about it for a minute there, you know?
Yeah, we spent a lot of energy worried and chatting about the lockout. Thankfully, I haven't really had to mention that, nor have you in quite some time. But spring training, of which you spent a good portion of your time down there, I did as well, was awesome. Love Scottsdale. We talk about that all the time, but it was a whirlwind. It truly was fast. I mean, it was 24 days. Yesterday, we televised the last of the 6 we did, and they played 20 games. That was it. Now they'll tee it up for real on Friday. So it's incredible, but I'm glad it's yours. I know you are as well.
182 game season, and that's not enough, right? We typically get more than that. It's crazy to think about. Yeah, it's, one of the advantages, I think that the Rockies had going into the season, based on some news today, may not be the same advantage. They all came into opening day. It seemed perfectly healthy, which obviously can go a long way if you're not losing some of your best players. But just before we got on the air here, it was announced by the Rockies that Lucas Gilbreth and Robert Stevenson are going to miss a little bit of time as they are placed on the COVID IL. And so now Justin Lawrence and Jordan Sheffield will be on the first baseline at Coors Field on Friday at 2:10.
Yeah, disappointing anytime that happens in terms of how it impacts the club. I think some of it depends on, I imagine both those guys aren't going to be out very long, Stevenson and Gilbreth, but, the Rockies now don't have a short guy on the left side opening weekend, and I would assume through the Texas series, but I don't want to put my foot in my mouth. I don't know how long this will be. I don't know. I mean, Gilbreth threw yesterday, so I don't know if they're asymptomatic and I'm not even sure what the protocols are. If it depends if they're vaccinated, if it's shorter, if they're vaccinated, if they're asymptomatic. But to your point, they're going to be without those two guys, for the first several days of the season.
Yeah, last night, actually, both those guys pitched, both Sheffield and Lawrence. Sheffield gave up a couple of runs there in the opener there in Oklahoma City against the OKC Dodgers for the Isotopes. And Justin Lawrence, in typical fashion, 1 inning, 3 strikeouts. So I think that probably could help spurn him into a really great start to the season because he's electric. And the Rockies bullpen overall, I think, are going to be a lot better than some people are giving him credit for.
Well, they have to be, and they have power arms. We've talked about that. I've talked about it on my podcast as well. They have power arms. They can miss bats. Justin Lawrence, we've seen him do that. Jordan Sheffield had a rough spring, and I guess it continued in Oklahoma City last night. I really like his makeup, and I like his upside. So, hopefully he's able to turn things around. He's still a very young pitcher, at the big league level, though he was going to start in Albuquerque. So, yeah, we'll see what happens going forward. Nobody, whether it's COVID, and you hope that doesn't affect things, much at all now going forward. We'll see. But, there are going to be injuries, and how teams navigate injuries and what kind of depth you have is the true test for every 40-man roster.
Very true. All right, let's kind of jump into our season preview. We'll start with our team at home. Eric is inquiring about it here in the chat about the Rockies this year, how well they're going to do in the NLS. We know it's an incredibly tough division with the Dodgers, but now with 3 wild cards, it makes it a lot more interesting. And the way that I see this season going, and again, it can go one of 2 ways, but I can see that the Rockies can contend in June, maybe even early July, and at that point Bill Schmidt can work some more of his magic and go ahead and acquire any pieces wherever they may need it. If it's the back of the bullpen, if maybe it's an arm for the back of the rotation, another bat for power, depending on what goes on with injuries or players who aren't getting it done. And as long as they can be successful through that first week of July or even the All-Star break, I think there's definitely some chance that they could, work their way into one of those three wild card spots this year in the National League.
Well, that's why I think, there was a lot of chatter during the CBA, I'm now mentioning in the CBA negotiations, that the extra wild card would de-incentivize teams to make moves because they figure, well, we can still, we can sneak in with, 84, 85, 86 wins, and we don't really need to make that move. I think it'll actually work the other way. I think there'll be more teams that feel like they have a chance and will, potentially exercise an opportunity, and the Rockies, hopefully are one of those teams. Hopefully they can stay in it and get themselves to, what is it, the August 2nd trade deadline now, and do something or a couple of things that make them even better, not just in the near term, but going forward. And to Eric's question, I don't see the Rockies winning the division this year. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they shock, a lot of folks. And are able to do that. But on paper, they're not nearly as good as the Dodgers. I think the Giants are going to come way back to the pack, personally. And then you have the Padres, who have an abundance of talent. They underperformed last year. We know they're going to be without Tatis for several months, but they still have a really capable roster. The Rockies will win that first division when the talent level and the performance and the health and all those things align in the same season. We know they were very close in 2018.
They were, yeah. That was an exciting time. It's crazy how time flies. And 4 years ago, 5 years since 2017. I think there's a lot of excitement. Like you said, they might not win the division, but we know that doesn't mean what it used to in the past. There was a time which, if you had the best record in the American League or National League, you went to the World Series. Then we had divisional play, and so now it's as long as you're in that postseason, it's a brand new season. And the Rockies are exciting. People are really juiced up, not just about Kris Bryant, but I think the moves that they've made. And I think it was a bummer, to trade Ryan Maltapia, obviously a fan favorite. But when you see what the Rockies got back, I think people were really intrigued by that, along with the pieces that were involved in it, this willingness now maybe to trade some of the prospects, and the fact that they save some money on Grichuk's salary. Just there's a lot of juice right now, I think, in a positive way. People are excited to get back to the ballpark and root for the Rockies this year.
Well, the excitement lies in a really good front four in the rotation, led for me by Germán. He's the most talented. I know he's going to start Saturday and not Friday. I don't know if Kyle will ever replicate what he did in 2018. That may have been a career type of year. A 285 earned run average for a guy that calls Coors Field home is otherworldly. But there's better in there, and the way he competes, and we've seen glimpses of 2018 again. Now we have to see it over a more consistent level. But it begins with Germán and eliminating, 3 or 4 of those real clunkers. Not, okay, it wasn't a great outing today, and he gave up 5 runs in 5 innings, or five runs in 5 2/3. Those happen to virtually every pitcher. It just can't be the 9 runs in 2 innings and you're out of the ball game when you had your quote number 1 on the mound. Senzatella spins the ball much better than he ever has. He made great strides last year. I'd love to see his strikeout total raised a little bit. He's going to be a heavy ground ball guy. And I'm a big Austin Gomber fan. I like what Austin Gomber's made of, but you got to keep those guys healthy because there's not a lot of depth. And the other part that you alluded to from an excitement standpoint, you have Kris Bryant in left field. You lose Trevor Story. Maybe that's a wash offensively. So you go, well, where are you better? Well, Randal Grichuk is going to provide a lot more home runs on paper, certainly than Rymel. And then you have to have, I love how Buddy puts this, Patrick, you have to have some incremental improvement across the board. Not, some guy who hit 10 homers last year, all of a sudden hits 35, like a Brady Anderson type thing, though we kind of know how that happened back in the day with Baltimore.
Great workout regime. Great workout regime is how he did it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Some help from his pharmacist, allegedly. So then you take like a Brendan Rodgers who may have a chance to break out. He's such a young player. And does he jump from 15 homers to 25? Incremental improvement. Ryan McMahon hit 24 last year. Does he go 24 to 29 or 30? So it's not like, oh my God, this guy just made a quantum leap. It's a nice progression for players, for the most part, who are young in their prime. And that overall leads to excitement and will lead to a much better offense, which is an absolute necessity for the Rockies to win far more games than they won a year ago.
Yeah, incremental growth is definitely the way. And they still have those young players who, not 22 years old young, but young enough where they're still trying to establish themselves. Sam Hilliard is another one of those names. Obviously, you throw into the mix there and you get excited about, what he can do with more regular at-bats. Keep the questions coming too in the chat. We'll get to them in just a second, Will and FNL Aviator. One thing that we've been doing this entire week is player previews. You could check that out here on our channel, DNVR Sports on YouTube. And that was the question that you touched on there with Marquez. He is the Rockies ace, despite the fact he's not going on opening day. He is their best pitcher, made the All-Star team last year. But can he this year, as you said, get rid of those clunkers? Can he become a true ace? Right? All 30 teams have their ace, their best pitcher. But Marquez has the ability to become a true ace. It's obviously a lot harder to do at Coors Field, where your numbers are going to be a little bit inflated. But if he can reduce those clunkers and have a few more of those dominant outings, which, again, isn't a big leap, it's incremental, he can become, I think, a true ace. I think he has that ability in there.
I like that term because, yes, 30 guys are going to start on opening day, right? There's 30 teams, 30 pitchers are going to get a tap on the shoulder and say, hey, you get the baseball initially. That doesn't make them true aces. There's probably 8, 10, maybe 12. I don't know. That's probably a stretch.
Yeah.
In baseball. We know their names. DeGrom, he's hurt. The Mets have 2, and in Max Scherzer, who's not 100% healthy either. Garrett Cole, you know who they are. I mean, true, boy, it's going to be hard to score against these guys. Does Germán have that ability? Absolutely, he does. It's not like you're saying, well, man, if he picks up 3 miles an hour or if his slider's a little sharper, he has all the stuff and he has the makeup to be a true number one. Now it's taking that next step, and he embraces that. He's talked about it. He understands that he has to, remove the clunkers from, the season's 30-plus starts. So it's nice to have a guy with that ability. The Rockies have seldom have had that in their rotation.
Yeah, all the tools are there. He doesn't need to go to Home Depot or Lowe's or get some steel equipment, some great equipment.
Thank you. That's
steel.
right. Steel's the best.
Wink, of course, right? He doesn't need to go out and get that. He already has that. His garage, his tool shed is loaded. So you can see all of those wonderful things happening for him. And you could get in on some wonderful things down at the Ice House. I don't know. Well, I'm going to try to pull your arm, Goody, to get you over to come to Ice House. We're going to have a cool little watch party there before the game. We're going to unveil 2 new Rockies shirts while we're there. All of the DNVR personalities are going to be hanging out. You might meet a couple new friends and faces there along the way. If you're a member to the DNVR.com now, only 50 cents for your first month. You get a member-sized beer when you're down at the DNVR bar on the corner of Colfax and York. And yeah, the bar will be open at 2 p.m. in time for first pitch for you there. Lightshade, Colorado's premier dispensary, has a great solution for ensuring that you wake up in the morning feeling refreshed. It's not a solution that's going to knock you out with powerful drugs like some of that over-the-counter stuff. It's called Wana Optimal's Fast Asleep Gummies. My parents use it every night. They are a lot more chipper in the morning, and before they even have their first cup of Strava craft coffee, they're already a little bit perkier. They're already a little bit more clear, and they've got some clarity to them. Wana Optimal's Fast Asleep Gummies contain 10 milligrams of CBD and just a hint of THC, just the right amount, that little bit to get the eyelids feeling heavy in about 5 to 15 minutes. It'll knock you out. You'll sleep great. But in 0 minutes for you right now, you can order Wana Optimal's Fast Asleep Gummies at lightshade.com and get 25% off with code DNVR. Use code DNVR at any of Lightshade's 10, soon to be 11, Denver metro area locations. And if you want to watch our guy, Drew Goodman, here on television and you're having some issues with your AT&T SportsNet, don't fret, because Evoca TV is also going to help take care of you. Go to evoca.tv/DNVR. You're going to get the Rockies. You're going to get the Nuggets. You're going to get the Avs as well, along with the Mammoth, Rapids, all coverage in one spot. It's just $25 per month plus a receiver. Your price gets locked in for 2 years, so you don't ever have to worry again about watching all your favorite Denver sports teams in one spot. It's evoca.tv/DNVR. Well, one of our questions here from FNL Aviator has to do with the division containing two larger market clubs, Dodgers and Giants. And the question that FNL Aviator has is this the best division in baseball? And I think in many ways you could make that statement. I know last year, the NL West, I think, won about 413 games combined, right? Obviously, the Giants and Dodgers did half of that workload, but that was second only to, I believe, the AL East. And, I think this year you could have that same situation. Now, even if, the Giants lose 20, or rather win 20 less games than last year, you say, all right, well, that's 87. That's good. The Padres can take a step forward. The Rockies can take a step forward. D-backs really can't be any worse. I think the strength of schedule in the NL West is going to be something that benefits them a little bit. Because if you think about the worst divisions in baseball, the worst division, hands down, has to be the American League Central. And who does the NL East play? The American League Central this year in interleague play. So I think that's one of those ways that you can siphon a few more wins into the division. You make it crowded. And, if there are three postseason teams that come from the NL West, Giants, or rather three wildcard teams that come from the West, it wouldn't be totally shocking right now in 2022.
No, I wouldn't be shocked by it. I'm a little skeptical of the NL Central. The Mets already have issues, even though they made a lot of moves on paper. They have issues, out of the gate. We know Atlanta is good.
Yep.
Washington, we are pretty sure, is not very good. Philadelphia should be pretty good. They have a really good lineup, and they have Aaron Nola fronting their rotation. That's Miami is, with their pitching, is not going to be an easy, when you go in there, you're going to face good arms. But overall, I would agree. The National League West, certainly in the National League, is by far the deepest division, and it starts at top, as it has year in and year out, with the Dodgers. As I said a moment ago, and you alluded to, the Giants are going to take a step back, but if they took a step back by 20 games, that's still 87 wins. And we'll see if even that's doable for them. The Padres have a lot of talent. They have a lot of good young talent filling in. Like CJ Abrams is going to come up. He's one of the best prospects in baseball. His natural position is shortstop. He may play there right now while Tatis is mending from the motorcycle accident. The other division that you mentioned is the AL East, because Toronto's outstanding. The Yankees have a lot of talent typically. Tampa is always there. Boston is pretty good, and Baltimore is bad, but they'll be better, because it's hard to be as bad as they were.
And they've got Jordan Lyles in their rotation too, so they've got that little boost coming, right?
If you say so.
He's better than what the other options that they have. I think we can agree on that.
They have some young talent coming, and they're not very good.
Yeah. The Dodgers, I mean, I think they're still the favorites. Even the fact that they only have one World Series in the last 6 years, and it came during that pandemic shortened season. They still have the best roster. In a weird way, it feels like their roster isn't as good as it was last year going into the season. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that you've got 2018 MVP Cody Bellinger not looking like a guy who can regain that form. Now, I don't think their season in any way hinges on his success, but he's going to be the factor of whether or not, they win 99 or 106 again, or 107.
Patrick, I'm in lockstep with you. That roster a year ago was the best 26-man roster, or it used to be 25, as we know, that I've ever seen. And forgive my opinion, a lot of people in baseball said the same thing. Dave Roberts, I know he manages them, but he could very easily say, well, I thought the team we had a couple of years ago was deeper. He felt across the board this was the best roster he had ever seen, not just the best Dodger roster. Now, to your point, they've only won it one time. And I know Dave went out again and said, yep, we're going to win the World Series this year. I agree. I don't think they're damn good. This sounds stupid to say they're not as good as they were last year. They're still really deep. They got this kid, Bobby Miller, coming. He's not even going to be in their rotation. He throws 100 miles an hour as a future rotation member. They're going to get May back at some point. They re-signed Clayton Kershaw, as we know, who still knows what the heck he's doing when he gets on the mound. He's a future first ballot Hall of Famer. But they needed help on the back end because Kenley Jansen's gone. So they go and get Craig Kimbrell. They trade A.J. Pollock. So a lot less depth when you talk about, their outfield possibilities. And then the elephant in the room is Cody Bellinger, who is one of the game's best players for well over a year. And he has fallen and he can't get up, man. I mean, you're talking about a guy who hit what, $165 last year. Do I have that right? And this spring he struck out in, what was it, like 75% of his at bats. You almost wanted to cover your eyes. You felt bad for him. So they're terrific. They have a great deal of talent, but they're not as deep as they were.
No, they're absolutely not. And I think that's why, they have so many injuries too. That's one of those strange things. I don't know that you can pinpoint. I know the Mets have always, seems like in the last couple of years, they've always had a lot of bad luck when it comes to, their training, whatever it is. And you have those injuries. And so you look at the OKC roster and you got guys like Jake Lamb and Kevin Pillar going, that's fine. I'll play in AAA because I know someone's going to get hurt. I'll find my way onto the roster and maybe win a championship. But yeah, the depth is I think a huge piece, and their farm system isn't as good. It's still pretty good, still pretty talented, but they gave up 2 big chips last year in order to get Trey Turner and in order to get Max Scherzer there, who's since left. So, they're only going to be able to do so much, but yeah, at DraftKings, they're at 98.5 as the over under. I think it's still pretty safe to probably take the over in there.
Yeah, they still probably are the most talented team in baseball. Last year it was an embarrassment, but it just speaks to how difficult it is to win it. I think the MLB is very similar in that regard to the NHL. We know the Avalanche have the best record in hockey. They're probably going to win another President's Trophy as they won last year. They didn't win it all, as we painfully know, a year ago. And baseball, you can be great over 162, and you can have the best record, as the Giants did, and right behind them were the Dodgers, and neither one of those teams won a World Series. It was the 88 win Atlanta Braves. So you got to get in it. That's the bottom line. Even if you're a wild card, you get in it, and you never know what happens. And speaking again specifically of the Dodgers, yes, there's not a GM in baseball that wouldn't take their roster over anybody else's, right? But that doesn't guarantee them anything.
The Padres aren't guaranteed anything either. And, last year I was all in on them. Same thing with 2020. And, they really upended the Rockies season in 2019. You go back and look at that series in the middle part of June when the Rockies, they had one of the wild card spots, and then it was 4-game series. It was, I don't know, it was like 127 hits across the 4 games. It was crazy. Wade Davis was blowing saves. That was the start of them getting better. And, enjoyed what they were doing from afar, especially with the rise of Fernando Tatis. But with all the moves that AJ Preller has made, I feel like I don't know what the phrase or idiom is, but he's just playing a shell game, and their prospect and their farm system, I think, has been weakened in a major way. Still got a couple of those guys like CJ Abrams, you said, Mackenzie Gore, Luis Campusano, a nice little catching prospect, but they're coming up short, and I feel like they're a little bit suspect. Suspect is the word that I have for them this year, despite the fact that their best pickup probably this offseason was their manager, Bob Melvin.
They were a big disappointment last year. And did injuries have something to do with that? And then they get hit with the off the field injury to the best player, I think, in baseball overall, Fernando Tatis Jr. They'll get him back at some point. And they went out, and the most important move they made, and you just stated it, was getting really an unquestioned leader, a guy of great maturity that's going to lead them day in and day out, and that's Bob Melvin. They get Clevenger back, but how long does it take for Clevenger to be the Clevenger we remember, and not a guy who's rehabbing, still coming back, from an injury? What does it look like with you, Darvish? These are questions that every team has. They have high end talent. They were a disappointment a year ago. Let's see how it rolls out this year. And as you said, in a really difficult division, when you're having to play the Dodgers and the Giants as many times as you do, 19 each, it makes it more challenging.
I don't think we've had a chance to talk about this because, this could be an interesting factor for the Padres and Giants, who are two teams, along with the Dodgers. Seems like they can just pick up a reliever out of nowhere and, turn him into the next best thing. And they can they can do that all the time, particularly with the young players. And a lot of that has to do with them being in, more pitcher friendly ballparks. But now with the humidor coming to all 30 ballparks, which you go, well, yeah, that really should only implicate certain things for teams that are at altitude, or, Arizona or even Atlanta, who is, just a 1,001 feet above sea level. But some of those ballparks that are on the shore where it's a little bit more humid and there's more moisture in the air, now the baseball is going to be a little bit drier. And then there's been some speculation that the ball might fly a little bit better out there. Have you thought about, whether or not we might see home run numbers increase? I don't think they'll spike, but we could see an increase there in places like San Francisco, San Diego, and then in Florida and Tampa and Miami.
I hadn't given it great thought. I do know that every team will be using a humidor, and so there'll be uniformity with the baseballs, and we'll watch and see how it plays out. The baseball's gotten a lot of attention the last few years. Sometimes in the middle of the season, it seems like there's been a jump. I do know this much. Historically, the numbers the first 6 weeks of the season or so will be down because there's still cold weather games in a lot of areas of the country. So you're not going to see robust numbers offensively. But once it warms up, the ball will jump. We are in an era where guys hit the ball over the wall. And so I don't see the trend changing this year from what we've seen over the last, decade. And that's rising home run numbers and rising strikeout numbers.
We got 2 more sleeps until opening day, and those sleeps are going to be very good if you're taking some Wana Optimals Fast to Sleep gummies. 10 milligrams of CBD, hint of THC. Again, you can get that at Lightshade, Colorado's premier dispensary. Use our code DNVR so you can get 25% off all non-sale items, things like Wana Optimals Fast to Sleep gummies. Get them at lightshade.com for pickup. Use code DNVR at any of Lightshade's 10, soon to be 11, Denver metro area locations. We do have this question about opening day. Opening day around MLB is on Thursday. So Rockies, they've got theirs on Friday. There actually were 2 games that were already canceled. I don't know if you saw that, but the Yankees game, I think they were playing the Twins maybe. No, that's it. Yankees have been already postponed, so they'll get started on Friday. And then Minnesota's game in Minnesota in their open-air ballpark in Minnesota has also been postponed until Friday. But any games in particular on Thursday you'll be watching, or are you just going to be flipping around here? Todd asks, where are you tuning in on Thursday as you get ready for the Rockies opening day?
I'm going to be watching Arapahoe play Cherry Creek late in the afternoon on Thursday, hoping we can bounce back from a rough loss on Tuesday against the Bruins. I don't know. My focus is on the Rockies taking on the Dodgers on Friday. Later on in the evening, well, actually, everything will start in the day, right? So I don't know. I'll have something on. I hadn't given it a lot of thought because I mean, when you work in this business as you do, you focus on your job, and my job is preparing for the Rockies and Dodgers series this weekend.
That's right. Yeah, I think the first now official game will be at Wrigley Field. So, I'll tune in there just to see what Wrigley
Yeah,
Field.
I mean, sure.
Check it out. Say
I'll have it.
Suzuki.
Listen, I ain't gonna lie either. I'm gonna have a whole lot of what's going on at Augusta National on in the morning because with what Tiger Woods has done, just being able to get back out there is phenomenal, and that's the best sports story going. So I'll bounce around, man. There'll be baseball on, but there'll be Augusta National on in between, running over and coaching some high school baseball.
I wanted to ask you about your guest this week on the Drew Goodman podcast, which was Bud Black.
Have you heard of him?
I have.
Okay.
Bud Black. Yes, okay. Notable golfer out of Washington, by way of Southern California, San Diego. Is Buddy a big golfer? He doesn't really talk about it too much.
Yeah, Buddy likes to play.
Oh, okay.
Buddy will play on off days. Buddy will get out there on off days. Go out there with Mike Redmond, and get a couple of guys. Yep.
Does he go left side? I imagine, right?
You know what? That's a great question because I've never played with Buddy, so I'm trying to. I have to ask him if he plays lefty, and I should know this because I think I've seen his golf swing somewhere. I don't know.
Well, he hit from the left side, so that could probably be the answer right there, right? You have to imagine.
Yeah, but there's some. I mean, all my boys, for instance, swing the bat lefty, and 2 of the 3 play golf righty. So there's a lot of guys who swing the bat lefty but play golf from the right side.
Don't want to, of course, give it all away. You'll have to wait to listen to that and download it on Thursday morning. But any interesting, notes or any interesting details from that conversation you had with Buddy, going into this season, a perfect guest to have, right here at the start of 162.
Yeah, one of the things I think not only that I appreciate about Buddy, I'm sure you do, Patrick, as well. We interact with him all the time. First of all, he's a great person. Number one, great person, very consistent personality, and he's very honest too. And I think he gives an honest appraisal of what he likes with the Rockies, what his concerns are with the Rockies as they embark on 162. And so you're going to get candor, as always, from the Rockies skipper on the podcast, which, as you said, will come out tomorrow morning.
And I imagine you'll go ahead and make a couple predictions about the season a little bit, and like you said, talk about the Masters.
I will talk about the Masters. You know what? I'm not big on. We all do it. It's like you're obligated. Okay, the season's starting. How many wins are they going to have? And we do this in every sport. I don't know, because I don't script it out. Right, Patrick? You do this every single day. You have an idea. You have an outline of things you want to touch on. I'm going to go over certain, absolutes for the Rockies to have a chance to contend. But sitting here and going, okay, the win total is going to be X. I don't know. I don't know if I'll do that. Maybe I will. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think win totals are probably like the hardest thing to come by because there's the specifics, but you can get a feel if a team is, postseason contender and whatnot. From the National League, and maybe we go division by division, who are you thinking is going to have a playoff spot, whether it's because they win the division or because they get in with a wild card? Like NL East, I think you've already said Atlanta and Philly are probably my 2 favorites. The Mets, they're old, man. Something always goes wrong for the Mets, despite the talent that they have. I think they are probably, yeah.
I mean, you and I both grew up back east. I was a Mets fan, as many people know, growing up, and I'm skeptical. I wish I could watch Jacob deGrom pitch all the time because when he's out there, it's just different, right? I mean, he's even different from his new teammate in Max Scherzer. I mean, he just sits on 100 miles an hour, and I mean, but he just can't stay healthy, right? And they have other issues. So, yeah, I would say Atlanta, Philadelphia, you got to like their chances. Moving over to the Central, I don't know what to make of the Cardinals, by the way. I think the team the Rockies just played 48 hours ago, Patrick, that we had on television on AT&T SportsNet, Milwaukee, even if Burns and Woodruff aren't as good, Peralta in the 3-hole, I mean, you still got Hader and Williams late. Their offense is nothing to get tremendously excited about. But that division, I mean, Cincinnati, a lot of guys left. We know that. As I said, St. Louis, I don't know what to make of them. Pittsburgh's not going to be good, and the Cubs,
they're okay.
They're okay.
So many things have to go their way, which in that division you could actually, possibly see that happen. The Cubs are probably have the same roster makeup in general as someone like the Detroit Tigers, and you go, well, the Tigers aren't going to win the division and go to the postseason, but. And maybe you could make the case for them too if they can, usurp the White Sox. But it's not exciting. But if all those veteran guys click, sure. But you're right. I think it comes down to Milwaukee or St. Louis. But St. Louis has their question marks.
I mean, if you were handicapping this thing and removing any bias, you have 3 more playoff teams beyond division leaders or division winners. So you're going to favor the Dodgers heavily in the West. You're going to favor Milwaukee in the Central. You're going to favor the defending world champions in the East and Atlanta. So now you have 3 more teams. I would say next among that group, and they all have potential issues, for me would probably be the Padres and Philadelphia. And that third one, who knows? I mean, if things align right for the Mets and they end up getting – 24 starts out of DeGrom and 28 to 30 starts out of Scherzer, then you like the Mets like you did, in the winter.
Yeah.
But if you don't, I don't know. And that's where a team that, can all of a sudden elevate and maybe surprise. And we all out here hope that the Rockies somehow are one of those teams that can contend, for a wild card. And even the Padres. I mean, there's questions. I mean, if I had to slam the gavel down, as I like to say, Patrick, say, I know these teams will be postseason teams. I know the Dodgers are going to be a postseason team.
For sure.
They're going to be a postseason team. And I would be shocked if the Braves are not a postseason team. Because I think the Braves, even though they won it all last year, and sometimes you have a hiccup, a letdown, I think they'll be better in the regular season than they were a year ago.
Have to be, yeah.
Right? They won 88 games. I think they're a 90-plus win team. After that, that's why they play, man. You can't ever be entirely sure, and injuries, as we know, in every sport are going to play a role.
Yeah, it's exciting because with that extra wild card, there's a team that we didn't mention that could be there. Like maybe Miami. Maybe it clicks for Miami. Maybe. Probably not, but maybe it very well could happen again. Cubs are in that group. I think in that maybe situation, because again, there's always someone that takes you by surprise. I think Miami, Cubs, and the Rockies are all in that group where I bet you one of those 3 teams like that would be an interesting bet to say, could you name all 6 teams, or would you rather have Cubs, Marlins, or Rockies as just as one of the teams to make it? I think I'd rather have those 3 teams.
It's kind of like a Masters bet. Do you want John Rahm or the field? Do you want, used to be, do you want Tiger or the field? You get 90 other guys where you can take one guy. Interesting little prop bet that you've put forth.
Like that. All right. In the American League, the AL Central is really, we'll start there because it's the White Sox and everybody else. There's a lot,
I think the Twins have a chance to be better.
I've been a big Twins fan. I think they're sneaky good. They were one of my DraftKings picks to make the postseason. So they could do it even after kind of offloading, Jose Barrios last year and Josh Donaldson. They've made some sneaky good moves. You're right. I think people might be sleeping on them.
Patrick, I got a prop bet for you because you came up with a good one in the National League. Would you take the field or 4 playoff teams to come out of the AL East?
I'd probably take the field, just because it's so hard for those three teams. I mean, it almost happened last year where we, if you would have gone that route, I think all three wildcard teams would have come out, because Toronto had 91 wins and they were behind Boston, I think, who had 92. And then Seattle was the next closest at 90. So yeah, that's a good one right there. That's going to be hard. There's definitely going to be at least two out of the AL East, right?
And then, and the American League's interesting to me. I mean, it's a fascinating time of year when you kind of do the prediction model, but Seattle, who we saw the other day, and they have an abundance of great young talent, and we know Jerry Dipoto makes more moves than anybody in baseball. They won 90 games last year, as you just mentioned, and the drought continues. They've not been to the postseason since 2001. It's the longest playoff drought in Major League Baseball. Yet they won 90 games, and everybody will say, well, they should be better this year. They were minus 55 in run differential.
Yeah.
Minus 55.
Wow.
Which, I'm sorry, does not add up anywhere close to being 18 games above 500. So they could be better and only win 86 games. And I like the direction they're going. They got some great young arms. You see that Matt Brash throw the baseball, who just secured the fifth starter spot. He's 96 to 98 with a wicked slider. They got Kirby, who's waiting in the wings, who's got similar stuff. I like where Seattle is. Is this the year the Angels finally make a significant move and get Mike Trout and friends back to the postseason? Does Houston take just a small step back, or do they take a big step back? Rangers spent $6 gazillion. How much better are they?
Not at all. I was just thinking that too.
Right?
Oh yeah, they're still hurting. They are another $500 million away free agents, I think, from getting there. Yeah, I think what we should say, and Jerry Dipoto has his own podcast, and I don't know if anyone's said this to him, but Jerry Dipoto makes more moves than Tony Manero, which there's a deep cut. I should have just said John Travolta, but I'll go with Tony Manero, his character in Saturday Night Fever. He's always doing something on the trade front.
Yeah, but Jerry doesn't wear, a white pantsuit.
He does have some big collars. I've seen the big collars, though. He does that. And he usually likes to walk around with 2 buckets of paint, which is very strange in that ballpark. But it's any good. You got any good feelings about like award winners, like MVPs, Cy Young? Like, is there one guy that you're like, okay, if I had to put some money down on this guy, I think this is probably the sure bet to make for the end of season awards. Besides Ryan McMahon winning the Gold Glove at third base, besides that.
Good question, Patrick. There's too many variables, particularly when it comes to health with pitchers. So I'm going to stay away from saying, oh, it's going to be Garrett Cole winning the Cy Young in the American League, or it's going to be, this guy and, in the National League. I'll say Juan Soto will be the MVP of the National League, which, again, you're asking me for things that I think, that's not stepping out on a limb. I would have taken Fernando Tatis if I thought he was going to play anywhere close to a full slate. We now know there's no, he's not. He's going to play about half a season. So I'll go Juan Soto. That'll be my one pick.
I like that. Yeah, there's a lot of variability with the pitchers. There's always somebody who kind of.
Oh, I'll give you one more. Can I give you one more?
Please do.
I'll go Bobby Witt Jr., American League Rookie of the Year, because he's going to be there from Jump Street, and this guy's really good. He had a great spring. He was predicted, because he was drafted 1-1, to be great. He's been great in the minor leagues. He's great in the spring training. He's going to win American League Rookie of the Year.
Bobby Witt Jr. is my pick for that one. It feels like a lock, but the American League has so many great young players. I mean, Julio Rodriguez, we've seen him down in spring training. He's going to start the year on the Mariners opening day roster. He's great. By the time the Orioles call up Adley Rutschman, he could be one of those candidates. There's a lot of different options.
Spencer Torkelson is going to start the year in Detroit.
He's the other one. Yeah. And maybe even Matt Brash. So I think Rookie of the Year is one of the hardest ones to pick, because it almost seems like it's never the favorite. Like Gavin Lux, I think he was the favorite going into 2020.
He's still not a starter, dude, right? He's still not a starter.
Well, I think now with the Pollock trade,
Oh, is he? Okay, now he's okay.
maybe he'll split some time with like
He can
Edwin
crack
Rios
the
or
lineup.
something. Yeah, really, they did him a favor, but you can never know. Say a Suzuki in the National League, you go, yeah. I mean, obviously that guy's probably gonna hit about 30 home runs, but for AL MVP, I got to go with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. The Blue Jays seem to be that darling that everyone is kind of rallying behind, and everyone likes Toronto, what they're doing. Their starting rotation, I think, is just phenomenal. They have like Yusei Kikuchi as their fifth starter. I think we didn't really see the best of him in Seattle, but I think he's got another notch there. And between him, Hyunjin Ryu, they've got Kevin Gausman now to replace Robbie Ray, Alek Manoah, and Jose Barrios, a guy who I have picked as the American League Cy Young Award winner. I think Toronto they're going to win a lot of awards this year.
Patrick, I'll tell you a real quick story because we don't see American League teams as much. It's one of the things I really enjoy about spring training because you will see some of the American League teams that train in the Cactus League. The Rockies were up in Minnesota a few years ago during the regular season and taking on the Twins, and this young kid takes the mound for Minnesota, Jose Barrios. And you're like, kind of the reaction that people had when Ubaldo Jimenez arrived, and they're like, who the heck is this guy? Throwing upper 90s with a splitter and a hard breaking ball. Well, Barrios, mid to upper 90s and that great slider, a wipeout slider. You're like, who is this guy? And now, you fast forward, and he's been doing it for several years, and he's now a Toronto Blue Jay. That's a special talent.
Yeah, since he's come up, if you take away that rookie season in 2016, has a 3.74 ERA there in the American League. So I think he's just scratching the surface. He's going to be 28 this year, so he's a little bit ahead in the depth chart with Herman Marquez. But I think both those guys have another notch to go, and so Toronto's is going to be interesting, and it'll be interesting to get back up to Toronto maybe next year with that more balanced schedule. That'll be certainly interesting to see what happens for that. Are you excited about that kind of shifting a little bit? So maybe it makes it a little bit more balanced for all teams in every division.
I don't know if you and I have been hanging out together too much because I was just going to ask you that. I was going to ask you, I want to peek ahead to next year because everybody's going to play everybody beginning next year. And it'll be curious, unless you've seen a mock-up, Patrick, how they do it. Maybe you have. I haven't.
No.
In that, I still think it's really important that you play a significant number of games inside your division because you don't want the division decided. Let's say the Rockies are in contention to win the division as they were in 18. I mean, you want them playing the Dodgers at the end of the year. You don't want them playing the Minnesota Twins, and the Dodgers, are playing the Cleveland Guardians. I mean, something's lost there, right? So you still want it's the number's not going to be 19 anymore, but I don't want it all the way down to 12. I think I'd still like to see it somewhere around 15, where there's 5 series between all the clubs in each division. And so to play everybody, or a lot of those, like, I call them the Texas two-step because the Rockies always seem to play Texas and Houston for mini 2-game series. Maybe. I think it's cool that, every year you're going to play the Yankees and the Red Sox and some of the, legendary teams historically. I think that's cool, but I do still think it's important inside your own division to settle it that you play the vast majority of your games, if you will.
Yeah, I think they reduced it to maybe 14 games.
Is that what you're seeing? 14?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that creates
okay. That's
20.
fair. That's around 50. I just don't want it all the way down 12.
Right. Yeah. So you'll have a 3-game and a 4-game series. So that works out perfectly fine. Basically, you're shaving off another home series, and that now allows, again, people to see Shohei Ohtani, or it increases the chance. We'll see if it ends up becoming every other year, because there'll be those, AL matchups for the Rockies where, all right, they play Toronto once, but it's in Toronto and not at home. And so
it's not going to be, it definitely is not going to be home and home. It's going to be one.
Right.
So if the Rockies are in Toronto one year, the next year Toronto will be in Denver, one would assume.
Right.
I think innovation. you have to keep evolving. We have had many conversations, you and I, about this, whether it's rule related, now it's schedule related. You want to continue to make it appealing to the people that love baseball and the people you're trying to hook onto baseball. And if you're a young kid who says, "Man, I really like Bo Bichette, and I like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Man, they're fun to watch," but you never see them, they don't come to a ballpark near you, not as fun. But if you could say, "Hey, mom, dad, you see on the new schedule came out in late July, Toronto's in town for a 3-game series. We got to get tickets." Right? That's moving the sport forward. So right now, as we discuss this here in early April of 2022 and peek ahead to 2023. I'm in, man. I'm in.
And how many kids really, or families, get to go to really only one game? All it takes is that one game every year to keep the love alive, right? And so again, if that ends up being your team and you're like, oh man, Vladito, that's the guy, or you're a big Bo Bichette fan, all it takes is that one game to keep it going, and now you're excited for next season, and that's all it takes.
I was reading an article on the great Al Michaels when I was flying back late last night from Arizona, and as many people I'm sure have read, Al Michaels will continue doing some stuff at NBC, but he's going to be doing Thursday night football at Amazon for a little bit more money than you and I are getting to do this DNVR podcast. And one of the things in the Q&A he was asked about is, where his love of sports came from. And he said he remembers vividly going to Ebbets Field, growing up in Brooklyn, with his dad to watch the Dodgers, in the 50s. And I thought, and then he went on to say, there was just so much energy and vitality. And it's like, man, I would love to be here every day. And of course, by the career path that he took and had such great success in, he's always been able to be in the arena. You and I are really fortunate in that we get to be in the arena and see up close, the greatest athletes play baseball. And so if you're a kid and you can go to a ballpark with your family and you see, like we're using as an example, Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Kevin Gausman, and they become real to you and you say, man, this is awesome. Then you become a fan, hopefully for life. And, sometimes it's that simple where you're around something, you say, this is really cool. And I know that's why you and I, are involved in what we do.
Yeah, it's amazing how just that little tweak to the schedule is going to open that up to even more of those possibilities around the game. And one other final tweak we have to mention, I think that sells the game of baseball incredibly well: microphones on umpires. I mean, look, when you come to the ballpark, you want to hear umpires talking about review plays and what they're reviewing on tape. I think I'm joking, but I think this is a good addition to that. So now everyone's on the same page as to what the heck just happened or what is going on with umpires being mic'd up, similar to what we see in the NFL.
Did you, I'm sure at some point in time, because there's usually a half a dozen times that I jump up on that soapbox on various topics, and this has been one that I'll get on. I'm sure I've done it on my podcast, but I know I've done it on AT&T SportsNet, where you're not entirely sure what they're looking at, because it could have been, did the foot come off the base, or were they looking at some other thing, like on a double play? Were they looking at the play at second where the guy wasn't on the base, or were they looking at first where it was bang, bang? And you never know. And come on, man, this should have been done years and years ago. So to say I'm excited, that's silly. It's long overdue. That's how I'm going to characterize that.
Yeah, it's amazing to think like Drew Goodman, Jeff Houston have no idea what's happening. If you're in the ballpark, you have even less of a clue, because if you're at least you're watching the game, you can see the reviews. You can hear your interjection. Exactly. You hear the speculation. You go, oh, okay, now at least I feel pretty good about what's going on. If you're in the ballpark, you're just sitting around waiting for what feels like 3-4 minutes, right? They time how long the review took, but before they even go underneath the hood or they put the headphones on, a minute or two goes by.
Yeah, and we get an email a short time later as to what it was they were looking at, but it's not. It's after the fact.
An email, yeah.
There should be some immediacy to providing information when they're talking in New York and reviewing something. So good. I'm glad we have microphones on the crew chief.
Yeah, I didn't mind the certified letters I received after they did the reviews. You know, I do have a stack of them, and I just got one in the mail from a game in September. So it's good that they've kind of upgraded the technology. So now, boom, there's a lot more immediacy.
Who's the first guy who goes Ed Hockley and starts showing off the guns? Is it Jim Wolf? I mean, who's it going to be?
Could be.
Angel Hernandez spends a lot of time in the gym.
I could see that. Yeah. Yeah, there will be some bloopers. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Who's the first guy that, it goes viral for saying the wrong word or flubbing or having his voice crack, one of those kind of situations. It'll be
Well, I was going with the gun factory. You know that with the right.
Yeah.
Who's going to show off the arms now? But
that's it, man. You got to get a good pump on if you're going to be Mr. Microphone guy.
Yeah.
And are you going to sacrifice comfort and warmth to go with a short sleeve to show off the pipes? So, and are there going to be social media accounts now for the umpires, since now they're a lot more public figures? Baseball could be opening themselves up a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Who knows?
We'll see. It's like everything in 2022, man. Game's changing, it's adapting, and there's a lot of excitement right now for Colorado Rockies baseball and for the Drew Goodman podcast, which drops on Thursday morning with Bud Black. Man, I'm excited. I'm excited for Friday.
Yeah, I mean, you can still get the Kris Bryant way. You can get any of the 140 some odd we've done, but Kris Bryant still going strong this week, and I appreciate the shout out. We'll have Buddy and get a season preview, and again, that will launch tomorrow.
Excellent. I'm excited. Follow our friend Drew Goodman here at Drew Goodman 42 on Twitter. We are at DNVR_Rockies. I'm at Patrick D Lyons. Remember, it's only 50 cents for your first month at the DNVR.com. It's been wonderful, but you know what they say about momentum? It's only as good as tomorrow's podcast. So I'll talk to you then.